Just to introduce the Institute for Ethical AI just a little bit before I get into my talk today, the Institute for Ethical AI is a knowledge exchange and research hub that supports organizations to understand and plan for the risks and opportunities that AI presents to their organization. So this can be AI technologies, but also it extends to analytics, data science as well. We support organizations in sort of mitigating the risks that are associated to the organization themselves, to their stakeholders, but also society at large. And we do this through researching the social and organizational impacts of these technologies and then offer guidance to organizations on how they can mitigate those impacts. So at the core of our work really is recognizing and celebrating human diversity as a necessary starting point to design and use AI systems. So we just don't want to just take a technical perspective, but also looking at the implementation of that technology as well. And the goal here is to look at how these AI systems that can fairly and equitably engage with human reality. So my talk today is building off of that, and I'll be speaking particularly about our work around artificial intelligence in the workplace in sort of an HR context, and introducing our latest program of work called the Future of Work Coalition. And this is aimed at making the digital workplace fair for all and putting the confidence in the hands of the employers to ensure they can do that as well. So just a quick overview of what role AI plays in the workplace. Automation and data-driven technologies are poised to disrupt every aspect of our working lives, and particularly after COVID, when we see this big gap in need for technology. So this is creating unprecedented social and economic impacts. Now, this can be beneficial, but it can also be harmful, and it's important to balance both of those perspectives when considering innovation. And this is a rapidly scaling issue, which is driving industries around the world to adapt quickly and often with little preparation for the complexities that are involved with this really intense form of technology. So as innovation is transforming our landscape, it is then our responsibility as users of these technologies to design the trajectory that these technologies take toward public good. So automation and data-driven technologies power many aspects of the workplace from the HR perspective. This can be anything from an informational chatbot to learn more about what kind of documents are available to you for a certain situation at work, to churn prediction, looking at how long employees are able to stay in an organization based on their previous performance and plan employment accordingly, to employee benefits and tracking what an employee, predicting what an employee benefit package will look like, to even automated video interviewing where you can assess the personality of a candidate from facial detection technologies. There's a huge spectrum of different technologies that are in play currently. And many of these systems are marketed as highly capable and objective tools for decision making. But a growing body of research, and as I'm sure many people know, some very splashy, newsworthy cases demonstrate a record of inaccurate results as well as inherent disadvantages for people with disabilities, people with color, and women. So this is a large segment of society who are often marginalized and bear the brunt of social ills that are being affected by these technologies. So in this context, there are two big risks that may harm an organization's diversity and inclusion goals when using these technologies. So first is the technology itself. So taking a technological perspective, we are expecting a complex and sophisticated math system to make unbiased decisions when its only point of reference is past human decisions, which inherently have flaws. So in this situation, if even an employer who has the best intentions but provides historical data that is not reflective of the kind of hiring decisions they want to make, will then be making outdated decisions or reproducing those outdated decisions about what they want from their employees. The second perspective or the second risk that comes from these technologies is how we implement them. And I'm an anthropologist, I'm a social science researcher, so this part I think is incredibly important, often missed out in the discussion, is how we implement these technologies. So we're asking a computer to make decisions that impact the life chances and economic opportunities of people who are using it, either for recruitment or for decisions that are made throughout their employment track. And when in this context, it raises important questions about whether we should trust the decisions that are coming out of these systems and what what degree of agency or power do we give these systems to make decisions on our behalf for people's lives? So these are two critical risks, and I think it frames our approach for how we address this particular area of work. So what does this all mean for employers seeking to adapt to a new technological landscape? This is not meant to be fear-mongering or saying that there's no solution here. There are solutions and there are strategies. And the goal here is to have practical support for organizations who want to make the next step in being prepared for these technologies. But unfortunately, there's very little practical support for responsible readiness in AI. The UK government's AI Readiness Index ranks the UK high and primed to take full advantage of the benefits of AI, but it's lagging in sufficient preparation in the areas of privacy, transparency, accountability, and most importantly for today, inclusivity. Without an adequate regulatory or consumer safety system for reassurance, these areas are critical risks for the legal, reputational, and ultimately financial security of these organizations that are using them. I like to often quip that you'll get more consumer safety warnings on a plastic bag telling you not to use it as a choking hazard than you would get on a piece of software that might potentially discriminate against employees. There's a big area of work that needs to be done. Now, there has been a lot of work being done from the technological perspective in terms of finding solutions through the technological system. Data scientists are known for aspiring to solve the world's toughest problems and coming to very elegant solutions for it. But despite the good intentions, many of these AI for social good projects take a mainly technical perspective that is inherently fatally flawed. So data scientists tend to study and collect data from marginalized groups and don't collect as much information on the conditions for those problems and why they arise. So it's looking at the outcome of the problem and not the cause of the problem itself. So when we turn a blind eye to the social context of these problems, we're often doomed to reinforce the status quo. For example, our field addresses challenges of employment AI fairness by creating these very complex measuring sticks for evaluating fairness in an algorithm. But this kind of misses the point. Equality requires more than just tweaking the numbers. It actually requires reimagining the terms of our engagement with the data. And it requires us to map, measure, and intervene in ways in which social equality is maintained through innovation, decisions, and policies by the employers. So really, there's an important responsibility here on the part of the employers that really makes a huge difference. So my team and I at the Institute for Ethical AI decided to take a little bit of a different approach to what's out there by putting implementation at the center of the process of responsible innovation. So taking the importance of technical progress is very important to us as well, but implementation I think is core here. And this positions employers to build confidence and readiness in AI and analytics systems in the workplace. And we've termed this program the Future of Work Coalition. And this is intended to be a pragmatic policy working group that we facilitate with 3 objectives in mind. First is to create a community of organizations that are collectively empowered to respond to the challenges of responsible innovation and establish a more equal and confident place for employees in organizations who are actively seeking new technologies for evaluating the current systems in place. So these are organizations at the cusp of innovation or currently under innovation who want to be part of a community to sort of set those best practice standards. So building off of that, the next step we think is, or the next objective we think is critically important is bringing together the leadership teams involved in HR innovation. So that could be HR specialists, but it could be IT specialists and procurement and C-suite level, anyone who's relevant to the process of employment using technology, sitting them around a table and having them form a shared common language to communicate their needs and their goals and their vision for the future with employment around these technologies. And the third is drawing on the best practices from these collective organizations and their teams to create a best practices model that is a new integrated model and a culture that's supported by ways of thinking and behaviors which reinforce this. So it's a supportive community that has shared common values, essentially. Now, the key to success of the Future of Work Coalition and sustaining the cultural change around responsible innovation will be collaboratively tackling the complex and rapidly evolving issues around the future of work. We're currently accepting registrations of interest to collaborate and be part of this almost business lab format and kind of be involved in almost an academic type research project. And if you'd like to be more involved, please feel free to get in touch over email or visit us on our website. I'm happy to chat with you more about if you want to learn more information, if you want to join, if you have some shared experiences. This is really a learning experience for our institute, but also an opportunity for us to facilitate that learning, peer-to-peer learning experience for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Selin. So you talk about engagement.
You reference HR and tech companies. Any particular size of business? If there's somebody watching, interested in what you've been presenting about, would like to get involved, what sort of parameters are we talking about in terms of business sizes? Any business, where can they be from?
So we're open to a large scope of businesses. So we want to make this information available to everyone. We're a university, we want to be open source. We want anyone who's interested in learning this information to be involved. In terms of participating in sort of a peer-to-peer network, ideally it'd be organizations that are mid to large scale that are at this point of innovating, sort of exploring these new technologies for automation or HR systems, or have already taken on some of these systems, are eager to sort of look at how this is working for them, if it's working for them, and how they reevaluate the kind of innovation strategy that they have. So it's very much, it's meant to be a really a positive community and a learning community. And so those are the kinds of members that we're looking to bring on board.
Brilliant. Thank you, Selin. That was very insightful. Thanks for joining us today.
Can I just quickly ask
also, sorry, because I know we got a little bit of time before our next
guest joins us. Other areas that have been looking into this particular area, what sort of examples can you reference? And sorry, I was off camera for a second, so I didn't capture whether you actually gave any case studies, but other areas that are looking into this particular topic.
So we are working in this from various different angles. We've been working with the World Economic Forum and IBM, looking at the topic of disability inclusion, particularly as it's an area that it's fairly underrepresented in the discussions around employment AI, and bringing into scope the sheer scale of impact that's felt in these communities by these systems. We've also been working in the area of legal AI. We have a consortium that is going to be starting up there in the near future that's looking at similar issues, but from the perspective of law organizations that are seeking to innovate. So those are some core areas. And an additional area that we're working on is working with purchasers of AI technologies to evaluate their systems and looking at risk mitigation strategies. That kind of takes a little bit more of the technical perspective that I didn't focus on as much in my presentation. And we've been working with a number of different organizations there and evaluating their systems and building our methodologies around that.
And timescales, obviously this is early days, I would imagine, for you, but in terms of timescales you've got for engagement with the companies, do you have any sort of dates you're looking to complete that research by?
Right, so this is meant to be an ongoing process. So every year we're going to have sort of a group, a cohort of organizations that are be working together and kind of building off of the previous year's knowledge. Okay. At the moment, our timeline is we're aiming to have our first coalition meeting in the winter of 2021. And that'll be our first year of the coalition and testing out and learning from that experience. And then the following year, we want to redo the entire process and start with continue with the same coalition members or add new coalition members. And because the technological landscape changes on a day-to-day basis, let alone an annual basis, I'm certain that the topics we'll be covering will be completely different by next year. So it'll be addressing every new change as it comes.